Director Craig Zobel joins us. His new film Compliance is out today. He's in a studio in Columbus, Ohio. Craig, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're doing very well. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Give us the story outline. Give us everything that we need to know about Compliance before we go any further on this.
Yes, sure. Compliance is based on a true event that happened here in the States, where on a busy Friday night, a manager at a fast food restaurant gets a phone call from the police saying that an employee at her restaurant was took some money from a customer, and that the employee needs to be brought back into the back room and held until the police can get there. And the police on the phone asked the manager to search her purse and search her person and look for the money that's stolen. And the over the course of time, the police always say that they're not quite able to get there right now, but can this manager, basically they deputize this manager to help them solve this crime. And throughout the course of the film, you start to realize that it's actually a prank phone call that is sort of going into very dark, strange place, and it's based on not one, but like actually 70 true events that happened in the United States.
Right. So the movie says, as you mentioned, it says inspired by true events right at the very beginning of the film. And often people will go, I'm not quite sure what that means anymore, because sometimes things that,
Sure.
It starts with a maybe original conversation and then it's spun out completely differently. So is everything that we see, did it happen in one of those many cases, or have you fictionalized the story at all?
It's actually really close to the cases would all follow sort of a very similar outline, and it's actually pretty accurate and close to what would happen in these real cases. I didn't elaborate very much or take too much license, really.
Okay, so we're going to play a clip from the movie in just a second. If you can set this up. So what we're going to hear the hoax phone call, as you said, with the man who's pretending to be a police officer, and he's speaking to the girl, the main star of your film, who works at the front of this fast food chain. So if you could just tell us who they are and set it up, and then we'll play this clip.
Sure. So the girl Becky is played by Dreama Walker, and the police officer is Pat Healy. Yeah.
Okay.
And,
they're the characters, and here's just a little clip from Compliance.
All I know is that I was working, and then Sandra came and told me that I stole some lady's money. That is everything that I know.
You stole somebody's money. Did you know the lady in question?
No, I don't. I can't think of anyone that it would possibly be.
Quiet.
There's no one.
Now, had you seen this woman before on the premises? If you're just straight with me, it'll all be worked out, okay?
I'm being straight with you.
Okay, so what that tells me is that you don't realize what kind of trouble you're in here. I'm gonna need you to address me as sir or officer. Understand?
Yes, sir.
And there are many indignities which follow from that. As you say, it goes to a very dark place, but essentially she's strip searched and spends most of the film with an apron of some kind draped around her, and then it gets very intense. And of course, this will be, Craig, one of those movies where everybody is watching it, thinking and maybe shouting at the screen, just say no, just hang up. This guy is clearly a hoax. If the police call, there are clearly procedures everything about this guy, even though he does sound like a screen cop, as soon as its conversation has gone beyond 2 or 3 minutes, most people would just hang up, wouldn't they?
Well, you would think. I guess that was sort of the reason that I wanted to make the film. I was, I was actually doing reading about this behavioral psychologist from the 1960s, Stanley Milgram, who did these, I think, relatively well-known experiments where he would have people be put in a room and say, like, we're going to do a learning test, and you will teach this other person by negative reinforcement, and whenever they get a question wrong, we want you to give them an electric shock. And in this Milgram experiment, oftentimes, the person, well, for one, I should say that these experiments were not actually people giving an electric shock. The other person on the other side of the electricity machine was an actor performing, but he would intentionally get questions wrong, and then sort of the real focus of the experiment was testing whether or not this the people would feel comfortable like doing something like this when an authority figure asked them. And the test came back in the 1960s. It came back about 62 to 70% of people would give this shock to a point where they thought that they were giving like lethal doses. And you would think that over time that would have changed, and they redid the tests in 2008, 2007. Thinking that the numbers would be completely different because, like you said, like everybody's seen TV, we've all like have the internet, we're all so much more plugged in and connected, but the numbers of people who obeyed an authority figure, even if they disagreed with what they were being told to do, were about the same. And while I was reading that and just fascinated with that is when I kind of stumbled upon these stories that happened in these fast food restaurants, which almost seemed like a direct kind of real life example of this test. So
the film has had some very positive reactions from Paul Schrader, Todd Solondz, John Waters. William Friedkin's one of my favourite directors, famously said it was brave, important and chilling. It has also had the opposite response in some areas. When the film first played at Sundance, you had a very hostile response from certain members of the audience. Do you understand why that happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a film that's I would hope, it's not necessarily meant as a simple entertainment. It's supposed to ask questions and provoke thought, and I didn't make the movie for any reason other than like me and my collaborators, the actors and the technicians working on it with me. We all were curious about like how these things could go so far. I mean, I think everyone's reaction when you hear these stories is, well, I would never do that. I would never listen to that police officer. I would know that it was a fake situation. Yet this happens all the time. So I guess like our curiosity was like, how do you portray this in a way that can possibly can understand like where people are coming from? And I think that can be met with a lot of resistance. I mean, that certainly has been what I've found when I've screened the film, is that there are certain people that are not comfortable imagining themselves ever being in that place and just reject that idea.
There's also a gender issue. I mean, part of the response at Sundance, people were claiming that the film had a misogynist tone to it, that it was reveling in the humiliation of a female character. How do you feel about that charge?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we've also been at the end of the year, the American Women Film Critics Circle also gave us an award for uncovering or sort of portraying the weight of rape issues and things like that. So we've gotten really both sides, and it's funny. I mean, it's a film about exploitation, and it's about how men use power over women in a way. So in the way that happens, like, my main thing was making sure that between, like I said, my collaborators, like all of the actors who are in the film and my producers and people like that, and just saying like, well, here are the decisions that we're making. Are we making decisions that we can stand behind and feel confident?
I mean, one of the issues might be, I guess, did your lead actress have to be quite so statuesque and model-like?
Yeah, that's a funny one. It's like, oh, why didn't you? Because if the person isn't as attractive, then it's okay to be sexually exploited more or something like that. I kind of don't really understand that note so much. I mean, for me, it's a funny thing. It's like we made this film very small American indie movie, and I tried to cast the best actor, and I wasn't, and she happens to be an attractive woman. The funny thing is, like, in the real stories, the one that this is kind of closely based on, the woman is very attractive as well. I certainly could have cast someone less attractive, I guess.
Some
I think
listeners'
that's
comments
kind
here.
of strange.
Well, I think the discomfort is based on whether you might have got more people going in to see the movie because you have a beautiful woman who is strip searched. I mean, and that was maybe one of the reasons behind casting her. So clearly, that is the reason behind the question.
I see. Well, that's interesting. I think that it's important that you recognize or sort of look at the issue of the fact that this is a attractive woman being exploited. I think that that's a valid and kind of important thing to be talking about. And it's funny because the film, we tried to do as good as we could as far as like everything kind of happens off screen, which has been interesting. People who've watched the film, especially like at that very first Sundance screening you mentioned, and then saw the movie again later, like came up to me and were like, "Oh, you re-edited it and cut stuff out," and I would always be like, "No, actually, we haven't touched it. It's just that your mind fills in a lot of the gaps."
Some listeners' comments. Jordan Bruce on Facebook. I've seen Compliance. I was blown away by it. In the same way, Marcy May Marlene moved me last year. I found it a truly disturbing horror film with a protagonist who knows how to control people. This from Paul Alexander. Just a quick note about Compliance. It's a film about ugliness and moral weakness, but made in a way that is ugly and both morally and intellectually weak. And the screen-filling disclaimer that the film is based on real-life events doesn't excuse the misguided, voyeuristic, exploitative, mean-spirited, people-loathing horror that follows. Michael Keating on Twitter. I'm lucky to have seen Compliance. I thought it was brilliant. A zeitgeist morality tale that's also timeless. Lloyd Eckhart. I notice that you have Compliance on the programme today. I saw it last October at the London Film Festival, and I've never seen so many people walk out of a movie, and I've seen Pearl Harbor. At the start of the film, there are about 600 people in the audience. The first people started to leave after 30 minutes, and the trickle became a flood, so that by the end, I estimated that over 300 people had left the screening. About an hour into the film, I could hear someone on the other side of the cinema shout, "Come on, everyone, time to go home." Clearly breaking the code, but I got the feeling he wasn't bothered about that. Would that be typical of the stuff that you have received elsewhere, Craig?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when we showed in at that London screening, it goes about half and half. I mean, there are certainly times where the entire theater will be, incredibly receptive to the movie, and there are times where it's not that way. And I think it's an interesting movie to see in the theaters because of that. In a sense, it does sort of become a kind of communal experience. I didn't intend to make a movie like that. I didn't know that's where that was going to go, but it certainly happened like that. On the other side, like Ann Dowd was who is the manager. The fast food manager in the movie was nominated for a lot of awards and things in America, and so there's been a lot of positivity towards the film as well.
Andow's performance is extraordinary. I wonder how did you talk to her about the role? Because in a way, she's the centre of the film, because what happens at the beginning happens because she isn't strong enough to decide otherwise, and her moral duplicity is the center of the film itself.
Yeah, honestly, like that was what was the most interesting. I think the reason to kind of make the movie, in my opinion, was just to think about it. If you hear about stories like this, which are very much like kind of tabloid stories once they're out there in the world, they're kind of the thing that happens right before the commercial, and it's like, isn't this bizarre? And if they touch in with the people who these sorts of things happen to, they're very much in a place where it's a defensive situation. I was tricked. I don't know, like the way people rationalize the type of work that they've done, or the situation that's happened afterwards is fascinating to me, and was to Anne, and we were sort of looking to try to explore, before you start rationalizing that you've done something actually bad, like how are you sort of lying to yourself and getting yourself into these weird situations, and that's sort of what was, I think, both interesting to her and myself.
Craig, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you.